Good morning. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the 22nd Central Texas African American Family Support Conference. My name is Shannon Carr. I'm your moderator for today's session, and shortly we'll enjoy reimagining the child welfare system. And while we wait for more people to join, let's just really quick, let's put some stuff in the chat. I did this yesterday and it kind of sparked a couple of interests, and it was a 50-50. So let's see about this morning. Waffles or pancakes? Which one do you like? Waffles or pancakes? As we're letting more people in, just keep enjoying the conference. I'm excited to be here this morning. See what we're putting in the chat here. Yes, yes. I see you. Waffles. Thanks, Sandra. Definitely with the waffles. Waffles or pancakes? Which one? Good morning, everybody. I personally like waffles. But when my mom comes over to visit, she makes the most bestest ever fluffy pancakes. And so I gotta eat those. You know, you can't not eat your mom's cooking, right? So, but she makes the best pancakes ever. Waffles or pancakes? What you think? Okay, both of them, Marcus, I see. Gluten-free pancakes. Okay, Bob, so I've never had gluten-free pancakes. I'm gonna have to try those. It looks like waffles are winning though. Belgian waffles, actually, Belgian waffles. Good morning, everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get started this morning, and thank you for participating in our waffle or pancake debacle, if I could put it that way. Yes, and the waffles are winning. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, good morning to you again. My name is Shannon Carr, and welcome to the 22nd African American Family Support Conference. We are here for the Reimaging the Child Welfare System session. And so before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Dell Medical School. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for helping us make this possible. Now we have a few housekeeping items to go over real quick. This is a safe, supportive space. Please help us maintain a respectful and inclusive environment. Please mute yourselves at all times and use the chat function in Whova to interact with other attendees. For questions for presenter, use the Q&A function in Whova. And if you feel overwhelmed or need to talk to someone during the session, please call 512-472-4357. Press 1, then press 1 again for immediate emotional support. Now, between sessions, you can visit our comfort suite where we provide a safe haven. And you'll find the comfort suite in communities under the main navigation in Whova. There are no CEUs for this presentation, but do take our evaluation at the end of the session for a chance to win a $25 gift card. Who cannot want a $25 gift card? Really simple. Just fill out the evaluation. And I also need to let you know that we have some great conference merchandise. Can you see my shirt? Great conference merchandise. So be sure to check out our online store, get your swag, go to ctaafsc.com/shop. All right, so please join me in welcoming our presenter, Judge Aurora Martinez Jones and Eloise Sepeda. Good morning. Judge Aurora Martinez Jones is judge of the 126th District Court in Travis County. She presides over child welfare dockets, including family drug treatment court and permanent managing conservatorship. I could never say that, Judge. Conservatorship docket, reviewing Travis County cases with foster children in the permanent care of Child Protective Services. Aurora has dedicated her career to ensuring the most fragile members of our community have fair access to justice. And then Miss Eloise Sepeda is a child adult survivor of violence and abuse and impacted by multi-systems. With much resilience and passion, she has become a national subject matter expert, practitioner of restorative justice and transformative justice, RJ and TJ, and violence prevention and interventions to advocate for anti-violence and anti-racism systemic change. She used her professional and personal experiences to build bridges with multidisciplinary providers for adults and youth services, and committees and parents to address disproportionalities in systems to achieve equity. Now, this is a live presentation, you guys. So what they say is here, it is not recorded. They are all raw and live. And so we appreciate both of you for coming on today. So I will go ahead and turn this over to you, and thank you.
Thank you. And I do have to apologize. My co-presenter, Ms. Sepeda, is unavailable today. So she's left it all to me, but I very much promise to do my best to make sure that everybody is engaged and enjoys the presentation that we have to share today, because I am really excited about talking about reimagining the child welfare system. I do have a little bit of a presentation to share, and I would love to share my screen if I'm able to do that. Let me see if I can do that here. All right, do y'all see my screen? Wonderful. So I would love to share with you guys and also get questions. I know in the HOVA app, or if you're logged on the browser, we have a section for Q&A. I'm happy to take those. If I see them as they come, I'll reserve some time at the end also, because I would love to answer any questions. But we have taken a local approach here in Travis County to reimagine the child welfare system, and it involves the entire community. So I want to share what this looks like with you all, because anybody who is currently working in child welfare knows that we are in some hard times. I will say it, we are in crisis. And it is very unfortunate on the state level that we have a hard time, because I think our state is so big and our regions are so different, making sure that we find solutions that fit all of us, including those most impacted, which are communities of color. So we've started looking locally at what we can do and how we can best serve our community. And I want to walk you through a little bit how we got to where we are. So of course, myself and Ms. Sepeda, she works for Mission Capital and is the child welfare senior consultant. I'm the 126th district court judge, and by local agreement, it is my responsibility to oversee and review all of the CPS cases. Every case that's a child protective service case in Travis County is under my court. I have an associate judge who works with me, and I kind of split the cases between the two of us, and we hear all of the cases in Travis County. Mission Capital provides a lot of support for the court initiatives that we do. And Ms. Sepeda has been very, very beneficial in helping us with the pilot, filling our gaps and making sure that we are keeping in mind all of the community pieces that are so important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we did that. To tell you a little bit more about why we even have a full organization that works with the court and supports court initiatives is that in Travis County, our CPS court is a model court for children and families, and that's officially how we present ourselves. And we started back in 2008. The National Council for Juvenile and Family Court Judges provides technical assistance for model courts, which basically is just us volunteering to be the guinea pigs to try progressive approaches, to try innovations to better support children and families. So we've been working on this since 2008. We have a mission statement that's to assure every child has a safe, permanent, healthy home. And since I've taken the bench, I've added this additional part to our mission statement is to be culturally responsive in supporting families while ensuring systemic equity for both children and parents. And so this is what drives us as a model court. We do have a website that has additional information. We have a model court page and a resources page. It's just traviscountycps.com. You can check it out and see learn more about some of our model court initiatives. So why did we even start doing anything as it relates to reimagining the child welfare system? Well, we have been taking a look at the data. We look at statewide data, and then we also compare that to our community. As I said, Texas is huge, and Texas is different all the way around. So we constantly want to make sure that we're looking at what our data is compared to statewide data, and making sure that we're doing the best that we can to serve the children and family. When we were looking at racial disparities, you can see the statewide data shows that African-American children are having more negative outcomes as it relates to being involved in the child welfare system. This is data that is reported every year to the legislature from the Department of Family and Protective Services. And we looked at the fiscal year 2021 data to share with you, just as an idea of why it's important for us, especially in Travis County. So we read the index, and the baseline is white children. And so you can read that to say that blue line is African-American children are 1.7 times more likely than white children to be reported as alleged victims at intake. They are 1.9 times statewide to be alleged victims, so they're investigated. And they're 1.5 times more likely to be removed than white children. And that's where we are looking at that data statewide. I would say, just as a caveat, that there are many counties in the state that have large Hispanic communities and very, very small African-American communities. So my perspective, I think this skews the statewide data a bit, which is also why it's important to look county to county. When we look at Travis County, you can see those disparities are worse than the statewide outcomes. In Travis County, African-American children are 4.3 times more likely than white children to be alleged as victims. They're 5 times more likely than white children to be investigated, and they're 6.4 times more likely to be removed. So this is a problem. We've got a problem in Travis County. We've known about this problem. This is the fiscal year 2021 data. We've known about this problem, and we're coming from 2018, 2019, where African-American children were about 8 times more likely to be removed. We've put some work in. We're down to 6.4 times more likely to be removed. Still a lot of work to do. But this is why we're being data driven and looking at what kind of change we need to make. So one of the first things we did was create a child welfare race equity collaborative. And with the child welfare race equity collaborative, we brought together the community, which included primarily our partners who work in child welfare and those people who are a mandated reporter. So we're talking about law enforcement, which is the #1 reporter in Travis County, followed by schools. And that is kind of swapped. Almost every other jurisdiction and other states, it's the schools first are the primary reporters to child welfare, and then law enforcement. But in Travis County, it is law enforcement first, then the schools, then medical professionals. We're bringing all of those people together, along with therapists, community, the churches, everybody who we know sees children in the community and may have an obligation to report abuse or neglect. We were bringing them to the table to talk about the issues that we were seeing with the disparities and the investigations and the removals. So we came up with a mission, and that was, with a focus on racial inequities within the child welfare system, we will confront and acknowledge the racial disparities in our community through building awareness, providing education, advocacy, and holding systems accountable for equitable practices and policies. We came up with a vision statement of assuring anti-racist work is prevalent throughout the Travis County community to end institutional racism and racial bias that has resulted in disproportionate outcomes for African-American and Hispanic children. And it was really important for us when we were putting this together to use the language that we used to say anti-racist work, to talk about institutional racism, because that has been primarily what we've seen impacting those disparities at that early section of child welfare at the beginning of the pipeline in investigations and removals. When we came together for this collaborative, this sits just outside the court. So we have the model court that is very court-led. This child welfare race equity collaborative sits just outside the court. So my model court has a disproportionality committee that's now a race equity and disproportionality committee, but this is something different. We have support through Casey Family programs. We have Mission Capital supporting the administrative work of this group. And we had brought in the disproportionality manager from the Department of Family Protective Services prior, Tanya Rollins. And she is still a part of this, even though she no longer works for the department in that role. And we brought in community. We looked at the top zip codes of where the removals were occurring. And we brought leaders from those zip codes. We invited them to meet with us. We talked about what we can do. We've done a lot of good work. We've had undoing racism trainings. We had courageous conversations done virtually when we went into a pandemic. We've planned on some town halls. We're really working hard to do what we said in our mission, to keep that vision and to be data driven. So one of our commitments for our partners in our Child Welfare Race Equity Collaborative is to share their data. So we can have those looks at what's going on in each system and understand why maybe law enforcement is the #1 reporter. What policies and practices do they have that are causing this overrepresentation of children of color being reported to CPS? And so it is still ongoing work, but this is one of the first pieces of this work that we've done community-wide that has led to where we're at now, where we have confirmed and decided to reimagine the whole child welfare system. And so Mission Capital is here to support us. We've been doing this work for a few years. And then we started looking at some other problems that were occurring. Those of us who are working in child welfare right now, we do know that we have a crisis of children who are without placement. We have a federal lawsuit related to children who are in the permanent care of Child Protective Services. And we currently have ongoing litigation with that. This is some data that I wanted to show that shows the number of children who are in the permanent care divided up by race. And what you can see on the right side of the chart is the population of youth there here in Texas. And we can, from this, look at the disproportionality. So we have non-Hispanic white children who are in permanent foster care account for 29.5% of the Texas population, and that's 27.3% of them are in permanent foster care. So that's not too far off as far as proportionate as to white children in Texas. When we look at the non-Hispanic Black children who are represented in the Texas population, that's 11.9%. But when we look at the population of children who are in permanent foster care, that's 24.8%, an overrepresentation of African-American children in permanent foster care. And we can see the disparity there highlighted the most. So we know there's too many Black children who are in permanent foster care. And we know, and the notation down here at the bottom is that we have children who have been sleeping in CPS offices. We have a child welfare system that seems to be the best you could say is broken, if not in a worse kind of crisis than just broken. And we started looking at the children without placement, because in those circumstances, we're seeing serious incidents involving those children. And when these children are without placement, they are under the care and supervision of CPS caseworkers who were not trained to be caregivers, who didn't sign up to be caregivers. They signed up to be social workers to attempt to hopefully support and improve the lives of the children. And now they're in this situation where they're having to do day-to-day caregiving. And they weren't equipped for that. And these are unlicensed, unregulated situations at their offices, maybe at hotels, maybe at other places in which they have leased to have these children located there until they can get a placement option. You can see how the crisis has been moving along, and the number of children who are in permanent foster care that are in these situations. And then that orange line shows you the serious incidents. By serious incidents, I've seen broken arms, I've seen self-harm behavior, I've seen physical aggression. I know in Harris County, they had on the news showing aggressive behaviors between the youth who were there. There's just been kind of across the gamut. There's been allegations of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect. kind of everything you can think of. It's been a very, very bad situation for our children, especially those children who are in permanent foster care. And we're seeing the number per month that are without placement. And now again, if you think about who is most represented, there's an overrepresentation of children of color. I pulled this data from the most recent filings in that federal lawsuit where they are reporting this information. And what wasn't clearly reported, though, was the actual number of these children without placement separated by demographic information. And so that's a little frustrating for me that they're not keeping a better eye on that. And one of the other things that has been highlighted just from the data that I've been keeping is that it seems to me also that the children without placement, we have an overrepresentation together and see what's going on. And locally, that's the data that I've captured. So this is not okay with me. This is not okay with a lot of people. People have been very frustrated that we're looking at all these different situations, all these different crises. We understand there's an overrepresentation. What can we do about it? So in Travis County, we've come together to completely reimagine child welfare. What can we do differently? What should be highlighted? How can we, and I would say it's not even fixing a broken system. We have to reimagine it all together, because when our child welfare system was originally created, it wasn't created with the people that are actually being served in mind. It wasn't created for children of color. Initially, there was a lot of placement of poor white children in middle-class Protestant homes. But we've seen what's happened to our Native American brothers and sisters. We see what's happening to the African American communities in Travis County, especially Hispanic children are overrepresented in our foster care system as well. And I think we are seeing a lot of issues with our children who are undocumented as well. So we are not working based on a system that thought about these populations to begin with. And so I don't know how we can expect it to have positive outcomes for us. So we've got to reimagine it. And when we thought about that, we know the department's not able to do this on their own. Like I talked about, they're statewide. Our regions are so different. We have different needs in our communities, but we do know that if we come together locally, we can make shifts, we can make adjustments, and we can change the culture of how we do the work here locally. So a part of our Child Welfare Reimagined pilot is to assure that we are being trauma informed, that we're culturally responsive, that we highlight the voices of the children and people with lived experience. And so through our pilot, we have a couple of different approaches on how we are moving this work forward. It got very complicated to the point that we have different stages and different tracks, but we're trying to document what we're doing as a blueprint for any other community who wants to take on something similar and to see what we did and to understand what it's really taken. So this started with a lot of discussion amongst professionals in the community and professionals statewide about what it would take and what needs to be considered if we're going to reimagine this child welfare system. We knew the immediate situation putting out the fire was these children who are without placement. So we started there kind of in stage one, and we're in track one and track two. Right now in our pilot, we officially launched the first stage at the beginning of January. It took a lot of planning most of last year to figure out how to get there. And so one of the things that we are doing in our stage one is I have a nonprofit organization called Partnerships for Children, and they are in charge of our Rainbow Room and provide a lot of supports and resources for our kids. They are the nonprofit partner for the pilot. We have partnered with Safe Alliance, which has emergency child placements. They are domestic violence survivor advocates and educators. They have a lot of community presence, both for survivors and for our foster children. And they work with them very well and are very adept at caring for kids and are licensed. They had some cottages that were not being used for multiple reasons, but they didn't have them staffed. And with an agreement and in conversations with licensing and in conversations with the department, partnering all together with our nonprofit, and through this pilot, we're using one of the cottages as a location for children without placement. We're hoping that in the future, it will change into a placement that is held under SAFE's license, but there's a lot of work to move forward with that. But in the meantime, that location is by court order. So that location is only for Travis County children, because we had gotten to a place where all of our offices and locations in Travis County got shut down, and all of my children were placed outside of the county. And so I needed my children to be home because they weren't getting therapy, they weren't getting services. We weren't able to really help them make any progress in a significant way so that they can get accepted into a program where they can continue their work. And we needed to bring all the resources that we wanted to make available to them, but we couldn't do it with them out of county. And so with them being located by court order at the Safe Harbor location, is what we call it, Safe Harbor, we partner with our local mental health authority, Integral Care, who has a program, Safe Landing, to get all of the therapeutic and psychiatric resources set up. We have engaged with Travis County Health and Human Services and the Department of Child and Family Services to get additional resources to our kids who are located there, including therapeutic mentors, activities, and programming, and really making sure we're able to bring whatever the child needs to them, or have them available to go to that service here locally. We also have the Partnerships for Children, who is also filling gaps for needs of any specific resources. And then I have ordered that we have a licensed psychologist who does clinical consulting for all of our youth who are without placement. And what that is a big overview of their psychologicals, of their psychiatric evaluations, their therapeutic notes. This clinical consultant, who is Dr. Richard Ewan with Lone Star Psychology. He consults with all of the partners and all of the team members who are in the position now of making those day-to-day caregiving decisions for these children who are without placement, so that we all have guidance. And really, it's like a professional parenting plan for all of us to be on the same page, to make sure we get the right providers, and to make sure our interactions, and for me, my court orders, are therapeutically informed, they're trauma informed, and that they will help each youth progress in the goals that they need to achieve through their therapeutic and psychological and psychiatric needs. So it is a lot, and it is robust, and we have weekly court hearings, we have weekly staffings, and we are making sure that the dynamics of the children at that location are going to be positive, and that we know how to encourage them so that they can maintain that positivity there. And it involves a lot of hard work. I will say it's not gone perfectly. It has not gone perfectly. We've had issues. But nothing that I don't think wasn't expected, because these are children that do have substantial mental and behavioral health needs. It is the department still who has to provide the oversight, although I've provided some court orders that give some direction on the kind of practices and policies I expect them to abide by while they're at that location. But it's still hard. We have workers who are cycling through. But the thing that I would say is that, hands down, without hesitation, we are doing better by these children than what was happening before. This location isn't meant to be long-term. This isn't meant to be their permanent placement. We hope that we can transition to getting providers who are licensed to take care of them, but this is definitely taking better care of our children than what we were doing when they were located in offices, or they were at a hotel, or at any other place where the department was really just housing them, because they're actually engaging with providers. We have a UT charter school who is partnering with us, and we have our children on site doing school. Some of them do go to the public school, and we're making sure all of those ARDs are occurring, and that we have the advocates taking part in the meetings. And we are also able to assure that they engage in normalcy activities, and we're able to incentivize some of those activities with them making progress in the other things that they're supposed to be doing. And my hope is that, since they are getting therapies, they are getting services, they are going to school, that will be improvement for their common applications so that they can be in the most least restrictive placement, and that those providers are willing to work with our kids because they can see the example that with the right supports, our kids can be successful in placement, because that has been the hardest thing, is that we haven't been able to get these children accepted into placements because there's just a lot of concern about whether the providers are going to be able to meet their needs. So that all has been the big first stage, the first part of the work that we're doing. And I'm very glad that we're where we're at and we've got a good process to it. Like I said, it's not perfect. This is child welfare. This is the business of people and people who have experienced trauma, which is never easy. But I feel really good about the work that we're doing. I feel good about our partners, and I feel good about the transition, which is always hard, in the culture of how we work with our children without placement. That said, I'm really excited about our second stage that should be coming to fruition over the spring. So our second stage is really about continuing all of that, making sure that we bring in better placements, but that track 3, stage 2, that's the really, really big piece that I'm thinking about, because we're going to work better with the families who are already involved in the system. And what do I mean by that? So those of us who are involved in child welfare know that sometimes we start with like a cookie cutter approach. Every family needs to do X, Y, and Z. Every parent needs to go through X, Y, and Z service, and we're going to just move them along the process. So I took some time and I looked at all the new cases over the second half of the last year. So for 6 months, I kept track of all of the new cases that were filed in my county. And I was reading the narrative and making sure that I understood what are the primary concerns here. And I say it this way because it's slightly different than what we get sometimes from the department's notations or whatever they put into the system as far as what the allegations were at the investigation. I was doing really a thorough read and using my judgment as a judge, understanding what am I going to be dealing with in this case when it comes before me. And when I did that, I was able to kind of break down some categories and some subcategories. And what was clear, very clear, without a doubt, the top 2 issues that are bringing cases to me. First, substance use. By far, drugs are one of the biggest problems and reasons why we have families coming to the child welfare courts. Second, domestic violence. Oftentimes, the two intertwined. And then kind of third, what we had going on was mental health issues involving youth. So I took the top 3. We have other things. We have physical abuse. We have sexual abuse. We have extreme homelessness issues. We have those kinds of things, but that's not the bulk of the cases that we're dealing with in Travis County. We're really dealing with the substance use issues, the domestic violence issues, and a lot of mental health issues involving our youth. So I took those 3 topic areas for our stage 2, that third track of what we're going to do different in this reimagination. And we are going to build out different tracks, expectations, and community providers to support those families based on the primary issues involved in their case. So as part of our model court that I talked to you about before, we have a family drug treatment court that is doing quite well. And it is a wonderful program where parents get to stay with their babies, stay with their children while they go into drug treatment. And while they're in treatment, we work through a program. It involves accountability. It involves getting a strong footing in recovery. It involves behavior modification and really getting all the tools that they need to thrive. After they finish 90 days of inpatient, we pay for 90 days of sober housing. And we help them then transition into the community, into their own housing, making sure that they get jobs, that they are getting financial literacy, that they're pursuing any education that they desire, and that they're working through their services through this. And so it's a whole specialty court, it's a whole program, but that's been going on since about 2008. And we have some lessons learned. We have some really good tools and best practices that can be applied to all cases where substance use is the primary issue. So we're going to take that concept of what can we change? What can be business as usual in substance use cases, as opposed to we're only going to put these special cases into a drug court. We'll still have our drug court, but there's tons of cases that can't get into that program just for capacity reasons. And we're going to build that out for all of our substance use cases. We're going to do it better. And we're going to figure out how we can assure the education is to our advocates so that they also know the best practices, the better ways to visit with our families, how to remove shame and stigma when you're talking to someone with a substance use disorder, understanding what it means to have a substance use disorder, and how, aside from just looking at drug testing, can you see the indicators that a parent is actually in recovery and can parent in recovery. So that's one thing that we're going to build out. And we're going to get some really good partnerships to help all of the other cases that don't meet the drug court capacity and eligibility. And we're going to do basically the same thing for domestic violence. We already have a wonderful partnership with SAFE. We have advocates who join our hearings so that there can be a really warm handoff into services. And we want to make that more robust. We know there's better practices we could employ. If we have a survivor and that person who uses violence, maybe we need to be bifurcating those hearings. We want to remove that power control dynamic that sometimes is perpetuated by the court system. And we want to be mindful about thinking about the intersections of child welfare, domestic violence, and race. And so we are going to have a group that sits down. We already have through our Model Court of Domestic Violence Committee, who has a lot of good practices, especially about keeping information confidential and how to work through our cases, making sure our lawyers are all really well adept at protective orders and making sure that they know how to get them and when to ask for them. And so we do a lot of work already around that. So that, again, I think is going to be, let's make that a bigger scale. And let's say this is going to be a change in how we do business as usual for domestic violence cases, when we know that we really have to look at those power control dynamics. And then how do we get all of our community of professionals and families who work with us educated on what is best practices to work with families. And then again, the same concept with our third bucket, which is the mental health for youth, which is a little bit harder because I don't already have a committee or a group that's working on that. But what is to know is that it has been identified as one of the biggest reasons why we continue to see some of the crisis in child welfare, especially with our children without placement, is that we don't have the kind of mental health supports and services for youth that we really need in the state of Texas, across the state. So we're really going to have to come together. And I know I have my licensed psychologist, Dr. Ewan. We have some other really good partnerships. We have Integral Care, our local mental health authority. And so we're going to have to start that group and meet to talk about how we can better support the parents and the children when we're dealing with primarily mental and behavioral health needs of our youth. And that one also really bleeds into our final stage, which is really going as far upstream as we can into prevention. It may start kind of with immediate prevention when we're wrapping up cases. How do we prevent those cases from coming back? Because what we've seen is that those cases with children who have substantial mental health and behavioral health needs, oftentimes are kids who have already been through the child welfare system. So maybe they had a case and they were removed from their biological parents when they were young. Maybe it was an adoption situation, and we're starting to see them coming into adolescence and some of the substantial mental health issues coming to fruition. And we have just not done a good job setting up our families, our adoptive parents, our grandmas, our aunties, the people who are taking conservatorship or adopting the children. We haven't set them up very well to be able to handle what is to come. And that's what we want to focus on in that third stage, which is going to go into our third stage, that is prevention, and part of the stage 2 for children with mental and behavioral health needs is looking at ways that we can set up families for success and to reduce the recidivism back into the child welfare system with those situations where parents and conservators just don't feel that they're equipped to handle the needs of their youth. And that they have to come back to foster care in order to get those supports. But that is a statewide problem. I don't know if we're going to find all of the answers in Travis County, but just like with our launch of our first stage, I know we can do better than what's going on right now. And so that's a big part of that piece. We're looking at how can we do prevention of youth coming into dual status. So I also run a dual status program. And it's our crossover program for dual status youth who are both in juvenile justice system and in foster care. And we know that sometimes one leads into the other. And so we're looking at how can we also prevent some of those cases, especially from the juvenile side, leading into the child welfare side. And so we've got some plans around that. and some special ways we can look at prevention services and supports, but there's a whole community of people who are willing to engage and help support us in making that happen. That also to say that when we look at those 3 different areas for kind of our stage 2, that last track to look at how we're working with families currently, one of the other indicators from the data that I kept showed that primarily in the substance use cases, we saw cases with babies who were maybe born with substances detected in their system, toddlers, small children. That's the bulk of the children who are in those substance use cases. For the cases with domestic violence, that's where I see a lot of my sibling groups, a lot of my school age children, and those needs are different for those children as well. And then in that other 3rd bucket of primary issues that we see in the court, the children with substantial mental and behavioral health needs, we're seeing mostly our older children, our teenagers, and single children, just that one child, and there may be siblings who were not removed. Those children have different needs. So also, as we're talking about different services and community providers, we're also talking about better supports for the very specific types of children and child sibling groups that we're seeing through these different kinds of stages. And so, I anticipate and look forward to more robust partnerships with different organizations like communities and schools for our school age kids and the sibling groups. And we have a lot of good community partners that are out there and able to really form the kind of support system and community that survivors who are caring for their children really need and rely on to be successful. And also to avoid the recidivism in those cases, looking at ways that we're going to better improve engagement for dads to make sure that they understand we want dads involved, that fathers matter, and we need dads to be in a place to be able to have a healthy relationship and co-parent, or if they're going to be in a relationship, to have that healthy relationship with the partner. And we've got to work with dads too. And so we have some initiatives coming up and some partnerships with some organizations like Goodwill, who has a Fatherhood Works program, and Man and Me, who's working really hard to bring programming directly to the court to help dads, and particularly dads of color. And so we're really going into the community, looking at even organizations that don't traditionally get connected to the department. And we want to bring them in and bring them to the table. Also, not only to provide us with supports and services, but to tell us, what are they seeing in the community? What are they seeing as needs? What are they seeing that we are not, right? Because as professionals, I don't want to continue to prescribe to the community what we think that they need in order to thrive. I really want to listen, which brings me to another point that I wanted to share. So I wanted to share this slide just because we have so many awesome partners. And this really, all of these individuals have been an effort of like me calling people and me meeting with people. This has really been an effort of just going out and talking to folks and figuring out who wants to be a part of this, who could share a vision of reimagining a child welfare system and doing that locally and making sure that we're doing it better. And what isn't quite here just yet, but is represented a little bit with Change One, which is something that I'm super excited about. Courtney Jones from Change One, which is an organization that works with former foster youth. She's provided consulting for us. And she has helped convene a group of individuals with lived experience. So we've got, family members who have adopted children. We have parents who've had open cases. We have former foster youth. She's convened this group, and they are my advisory council. Just like I said, I don't want to continue prescribing to the community what I think or what anybody else who's just a professional thinks that the community needs, but to, again, we're going to reimagine it. And the thing that we know was missing from the current system that we have is the voice of the people that are going to be impacted, having a say in what's actually going to happen, having a say in what can be helpful, having a say in what they really need in order to thrive and really alleviate some of the issues that have come up as unhealthy and unsafe for children. And so that advisory group has been convened. They're getting training. They're going to be a big support for the work that we do through Casey Family Programs. We're able to pay them for their time as well, because I don't want to take that for granted. And that has been tremendous for us in being able to assure that we don't fall into what I think oftentimes is the same old trap of let's do something and let's do it better, but then not really being informed. And so from my perspective, some of the top things are data-driven. Data. I don't want to do it because I think that's what it is. I want to have data that says this is a problem, this is a need. And then 2, people with lived experience, from family impacted parents and youth. I want to make sure that their voices are highlighted in the work that we're going to do. If we're going to reimagine this whole darn thing, we really need to do it right. And I do welcome any additional individuals, organizations, agencies who want to be a part of this, because like I said, this is not just for me, this is for the whole entire community, and the whole entire community, I think, needs to be involved for this to be successful. So we have some details about the pilot that talks about the progress and all the steps that we've taken. TravisCountyCPS.com, just under our model court page at the very bottom, you'll see the pilot, and you can click there for the pilot, but it's just /pilot. And I have my contact information there. Ms. Sepeda's information is there. I'll give y'all a minute to write that down or take a screenshot, but I'm also on the HOVA app. You can contact me directly. And I'm just so glad to share what we've been doing here and what we've started, because like I said, this work is by no means over, and it is going to require everybody to be involved. But I would love to take some time to visit and see if there are any specific questions. I do think I have some in the Q&A. So I'm going to stop my screen share and let's see. I've got, let's see. Do I think that peer support can play a part in improving outcomes for parents with substance use disorder? Yes, yes, yes. So in our family drug court, we do have peer recovery coaches. And I'm really very excited because Mission Capital, where Ms. Sepeda works, they're also doing, getting ramped up for parent cafes. And the advisory council, I know that I'm bringing to me, I'm looking for them on other suggestions of, you know, as people with lived experience, what kind of peer support, what format? Because again, we've got parent cafes that we thought of. We've got, I think peer recovery coaching is out in the community. And so that I highly go by that. And I know some of our graduates have become peer recovery coaches. So I know they got good people. And so we support that. And we're just going to be looking at how we expand a little bit more to the greater community of parents who are in recovery. So yes, 100% peer support. And I also just want to acknowledge that I think we all know, if you've done any trauma training, you've done anything to say that you're trauma informed, that peer support is one of those key components of a trauma informed approach. So I appreciate, and I like that question. Thank you. And then, will the PowerPoint be available? Yes, I will share it with whomever needs it to post it through the HOVA site. I'm happy to share the PowerPoint. I see we have, let's see, is it Chanel? You have a question?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to know, you may have answered this question. I actually work with you with drug court. I work with Communities for Recovery.
Yes, I see a couple of y'all on here that we work with.
Yes, so you may have answered this. So I wanted to know, do you, with the new Courtney Jones, did I say that right? Courtney Jones?
Courtney Jones, yeah.
I'm super excited about that. So that's going to be available to all of our girls. And as far as the advisory board, are you going to have peers, coaches on your advisory board for that program?
So Courtney is the one who is convening the individuals with lived experience. And I will tell you, we have submitted to her some names of former family drug court graduates. So she does have some drug court graduates. And I know a couple of the names maybe that were submitted are people who are who have either gone through or are going through the peer recovery coach training to be a peer recovery coach. So kind of yes, but it's actually through graduates that we've submitted some names, and that's to Courtney on how she's selecting, because I think that group is kind of, they have their own process of how they're bringing on new members. Yeah, and I'm letting them do their thing. I'm not going to dictate what they do. That's them.
I would very much like to learn more or be in contact with her. I went through everything that the girls are going through that I work with. I've been with Communities for Recovery now for 6 years, and they have been very instrumental in keeping me on the straight and narrow. It's an awesome group of individuals that I work with. I'm so blessed that they have crossed my path, and I would really love to learn more about this program, and I would like her contact information.
Yes, I think you can message me through the HOVA app. If you want to send me your email address, I'll send it over to you.
Okay, that'll be amazing. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Yes, really quick. You can definitely email Judge Martinez Jones and send her something through the speaker chat and also through any of our messaging. Also, if you do want to continue to ask questions, we do have a couple of minutes left. Well, we have about 20 minutes left.
Yeah.
So if you want to ask any questions, feel free to do that in the chat or just raise your hand. And we will answer as many as we can for the time that we have. Currently, right now, Judge, we also have Miss Deborah Murphy, who is waiting. So, Miss Murphy, go ahead. Dr. Murphy, how are you?
Yes.
I'm good. How are you, Miss Carr? Hi,
I'm wonderful.
Judge Martinez Jones. I
Good
just
to
want
see you.
It's good to see both of you too. Two mentors who have worked with my students from Houston-Tillotson University over the years. And Judge Martinez Jones, I just want to say that it was a very powerful presentation. And my two students who worked with you last semester got so much out of that experience. And so I appreciate you for it. And of course, Ms. Carr, you know, the students who have worked with you have also really enjoyed it and gotten a lot out of it as well. And so just to make this brief, I look forward to seeing how my students can also work with the peer aspects of your program going forward. And I'll be in touch with you about that after the conference. Thank you very much.
And Dr. Murphy, I did mean to reach out to you. So here's one other thing that I will say. I'll just pitch. One, I do internships with my court. You can be a law student, you could be a social work student, you can be any other kind of student that's interested in this area, and you can be from any of our schools around Central Texas. And I've even taken a couple that are out of state since we've been virtual for a while. So if you work with students and you think that an experience in working with my court would be something that they would enjoy and benefit from, please, by all means, send them my way. Like I said, message me, and it's just resume and letter of interest, and then their most recent transcript. The other thing is part of this pilot and making sure that we don't lose sight of staying connected to the community. And I have this full-time job, this gig called being a judge. So there's a lot going on. We are actually hiring. So through Partnerships for Children, we have a position available to have somebody really be a right-hand man for me and be connected in the community, help this pilot move forward. It's a community engagement specialist. I'm dropping in the chat the link to make sure that comes up, to apply for the position. And there is a link for that on that pilot page. Make sure that it goes through. But if not, I will, let's see. It gave me an error. Let me see if I can send this again, because I definitely want y'all to share. There it goes. And so, and the range, right, the salary range, I think, is 52 to 54 annually. So if you know somebody who would be really good, and my biggest thing is, one, you know, be passionate about the pilot and reimagining child welfare, and two, either know or be really interested to learn about our local community, because I want to go find those organizations that are doing the things right, that are culturally responsive, that for whatever reason never come to the attention of my court or for me or for the department, but I know that they're doing good work, because there's so many out there. There are so many out there. And I know we can do better connecting our families, because what I want is the system to step away. Let's step away and let's take care of each other. And so
Thank you.
I was going to send that to you, Dr. Murphy, because I know you work with students and someone may be looking for a job. So we do have a position currently available.
I'm just saying, this is the entire reason why we have this conference, for the resources, for the connection, and I love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Murphy. You have done so much for just our community and our children at Houston-Tillotson. So we appreciate you for just giving them the stuff that they need, not only the book sense, but you put them out there in the community so they can have that awareness. Thank you
Well,
so much.
Thank you.
I did see another question also, Judge. Let me get back up here. It said, how can advocates, practitioners become involved? Do you need more ARD, IEP advocates? And if you can give us those acronyms, that would be great. I think it's the ARDs for the schools. And do advocate volunteers work directly for your court? How can I apply?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different ways in which we are bringing in supports. So Partnerships for Children is one. We're working with Foster Village, who also has the ability to bring some volunteers. And we're working through some of our other partner programs, like with our therapeutic mentors. I know we have a lot of our partners coming together to be able to get approved so that they can work with our kids. So I would say if you have an interest, send me an email. Send me a message through the app. I'll be monitoring and see who all's involved, but absolutely we need, like I said, everybody involved, and there's different roles for everyone to play. Some of the things that we were looking at, for example, is if we're going to bring activities to our youth, like who are at the Safe Harbor location, what can we bring? Is there people who are skilled in, like yoga and wants to bring a session of yoga to them? Is there somebody who can teach them how to cook? I had a youth who tried to make the pancakes, like we were talking about earlier. They're trying to make pancakes and the whole fire department had to come out because the smoke situation was a little too much. But how great that I have a 17-year-old who wants to learn how to make pancakes, right? And that's what's missing. Is those pieces of parenting that we don't really have. And so there's just a process, obviously, since we're working with children in foster care and being approved, but we can get you engaged for sure if you do have a desire and a heart to help. It just depends on where. If you think you may be able to host a kid, like for example, we were looking for families who are willing to host our kids like over Thanksgiving or over Christmas, just so they're not at this location without placement. I know spring break is coming up. There's things that we still need to provide. And then there's also our families, the families who are currently struggling, working through their CPS case, who could use somebody. I can't tell you how many young moms with lots of kids that I have in my court that I know if they had some more supportive resources, if they had people that they could rely on and depend on, that community built around them, that perhaps it would be a big stepping stone to really getting out of the current situation they have, particularly on those domestic violence cases where they really rely on that person using violence for things like transportation or, just because they're alone in parenting and it gets scary sometimes. One thing that stood out to me is I had a case once with a young mom and we were talking and she said, my biggest difficulty is sometimes, I have a situation and I have no one to call. She said, my baby might have a high fever, but it's not quite high enough what it says to take them to the hospital, but I might just be concerned and I just want to talk to somebody. And when I thought about when I had those situations with my babies, who did I call? I called my mom, right? Called my mom, called my dad. And these kids don't have that person to call to say, is this one of those moments? Or baby's fussing. What should I do? I'm just so stressed out. So I think that there's a lot of space if you are a person, quite honestly, our parents sometimes could use, we call it peer support, but it's also a form of mentoring, right? Because sometimes our parents who were in this recidivism cycle have gone through the child welfare system as children and are adults, and they never had healthy relationships modeled for them. And so there's things like that I think just being a part of their world could be helpful. So I would say yes, and it depends on where your heart and where your passion is. We will find some place for you to be involved with the work that we do. I did also want to put in the chat from Miss Sepeda, if you are interested in, if you're interested in getting updates from Mission Capital, who does a lot of this community work with us, you can sign up there and you'll get their emails about what's going on in the community and how to stay involved and connected.
Sounds good. So I have a question from Miss Nikki Washington.
Yes.
And Miss Washington, I'm not exactly sure if you would like to unmute so you can kind of get a little bit more in it. The question was, what does this look like? And I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. So if you can unmute and possibly let us know, just elaborate on that question.
I don't know if maybe she was talking about something specific I had said at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, and I wasn't exactly sure. But if not, Ms. Washington, you are free to unmute, raise your virtual hand, and then we'll get back to you. But another question that I have from Ms. Kimberly Mosley, do you see any correlation with individuals with disabilities, parents and or children, and increased child welfare system involvement? And then what are the most urgent needs for this specific group in your opinion?
Yeah, I will say that it is not an overwhelming amount of cases that I see with individuals with disabilities, but yes. And then I think it also depends what kind of disability specifically we're talking about. But if we're talking about like substantial disabilities that were the primary reason for the child welfare case starting, I would say the biggest challenge in those cases, whether it is a disability of a parent or a disability of a child, is the community of support that they have around them. So for example, if it's a disability of a parent and there's a concern, there's a place in the law that says if a parent has a disability that's substantial enough that they cannot care for their child until the child is 18, that their rights can be terminated based on that disability. But in those cases, what we're trying to do and what we're looking for, if there is that disability, it's not a disability that's going to be remedied through therapy or medication or anything like that. We're looking for a family member. We're looking for a supportive adult in that person's life who will help parent with that parent and assure that there's not going to be any unsafe situation that occurs. And if that parent doesn't have that kind of support system, that's when we see it in my court. That's when we see a problem. The same when it's a child. We have some children that have some disabilities, whether it's learning disabilities in school that require a lot of active engagement by the parent, or whether it's physical disabilities and maybe they have nursing and they just have a lot of support that needs to occur. Again, if that parent doesn't have that support group, right? If you have learning disabilities, for example, or those kinds of situations where it involves really robust partnership with the school, that might mean having to leave work to go to the school often. It might mean a lot of meetings. It might mean a lot of additional tutoring and therapies for your child. And who is doing all the transportation for that? And how are you holding down your job if you constantly have to be at the school? That takes a village, right? For that parent just to be able to hold down their job, take care of their responsibilities, and be that extra supportive, engaged parent that's required when you have a child that has those needs. And the same with the physical disabilities. Think about a single mom who's trying to work with a child that has physical disabilities and an emergency happens, right? And imagine even if they have another kid and that kid has an emergency, but it is not easy just to pick up and get on the bus and go to somewhere, or just to pick up and load up in the car and do whatever you do. Transportation is a huge issue for a lot of our families. And so then again, it's about who is in this parent's world as a support system, who do they lean on, and how are those people available to them? So I would say, it's not overwhelming, but we do see those cases, and we primarily see those cases when the parents really just don't have that support system and that network of people so that they can lean on to help them really do what they need to do as a parent. But thank you for that question.
So it just occurred to me that her question kind of also brought up an idea or something that I was going to ask you also, because and first of all, I see your energy, my sister. I see how excited
I'm a little bit passionate about this, if you can't tell.
Exactly. So I so see that in you, and I know that this is something you want to make sure that works with the stages and with the tracks and to make our babies better, and to have the resources for the families and whatnot. And this is what I thought of when she brought that up, is that there are so many different facets. I mean, you just kind of blurted out a whole bunch of them. And there's so many different facets of what could be possible and what the needs are and how we can help provide and the resources. Is there a way that somebody can directly get in contact with this collaboration, with this project, to say, I'm here to do blah, blah, blah? Do you have a wish list, of this is what we need, and how do we get involved? Because your energy made us excited. So
And I'll
now
tell
we're
you,
excited and we want to
I'll
help.
tell you, yeah, I'm excited. And this is so funny because I'm like, you guys are getting to hear about this pilot kind of, really early on. This is like, we're moving forward. The people who are involved know about it, but this is kind of one of the first times that I've more publicly given a picture of what's going on. So I'm excited to share it with you. And that community engagement specialist, that's going to be your primary contact as soon as I can hire that person. So again, anybody who wants to work with me and do this work, please apply. But in the meantime, it's me. I have consultants through Copia, and they're helping me coordinate all of the people who are coming on board, as well as Courtney Jones from Change One. She's my consultant specific for people with lived experience and being inclusive. So that is, like I said, I need a whole other person just to stay on me, stay on this pilot, hold us accountable, tell us when we're not doing the thing that we said we're supposed to do. And that is her, that is what she's doing. So I do have the consultants right now. And once we get the community engagement specialist, we're gonna have that person as the real front door to get all the people connected into the right spaces. So that's where we're at. And like I said, message me on this, send me an email. I am collecting individuals and people who also have the spirit to do this work. Like I said, it's gonna take all of us, but I'm really excited. And I wanna say, because I know, I just want to say I love social workers. And so to all the social workers and the social workers at heart, which I'm a little bit at heart a social worker, but to all of you out there, I love you and I love what you're doing. And I want you to know that these are hard times that we have, but we're going to get through them. And I think about serendipity, and I just want to share this since it is Black History Month. I am the judge of the 126th District Court, and it's really serendipitous for me. I went to the University of Texas School of Law, so my heart is here in Austin. And the first African-American who tried to go to UT Law was denied. That's Heman Sweat. And so he sued the law school, and he sued the law school in the court that I currently sit in. The case that came out of my court was Sweat v. Painter, which is a case that Brown v. Board leaned on to desegregate schools. So if not for Thurgood Marshall, who was the attorney from the NAACP, who filed the lawsuit and represented Mr. Sweat in the current court that I sit in, for the law school that I went to, so that I could even go to that law school as a woman of color, to now sit in that bench, man, I know greatness came before me for me to even be here, for me to be the first Black person in this bench, for the history that comes with it, and for the work that I'm doing for the community now in this bench. I just want y'all to say anything is possible. So tough times as it may be, I got y'all because I know y'all got me, and we're going to do this for our children, and we're going to do this for our parents, and it's meant to be. It's just meant to be. So I just wanted to share that little bit of Black history and Austin history and national history that is birthed in where I'm at now and the work that we're doing and how I want everybody to be a part of this.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And honored to be around you. This is the first time I have met you, Judge, and I hope I'm able to continue with this partnership. Absolutely. There is another question. First of all, there are so many chats going on. Here's one from Shelley McAllister. We are just fortunate to have your innovation, Judge, and thank you. And then there's just some others that are in here. They are so, like, just the idea of having this opportunity is just unreal, but one of the questions that came out of this is from Natasha. She said, this is really great initiative. Unfortunately, some of the other county child welfare offices are not making these kind of positive changes. Is there work in other counties to address these systemic problems?
There will be. One of the things is I'm not very quiet, right? So I have been out training judges. I have been working with the Supreme Court's Children's Commission. I've told them about what we're doing, and I've shared the pilot. This is my commitment to the rest of the state, And I say this for the other judges in the community because I think judicial leadership is huge and can move some change like this in a dramatic way, but also to the community. Because the thing is, one, the community selects the judge, right? And the community can change, and that judge will have to change too. So what we're doing with this pilot, how I have the chart, I have a website, I've got consultants, we are creating a blueprint. And what we do here, we want to share with every other community so that they can do it and do it right for their community, right? So that they have the advisory council from Harris County, from Houston. They have their advisory council from Dallas. They have their advisory council out in West Texas, East Texas too. And we will show them that you've got to work with the people who are the ones being impacted. Later this week, I'm going to be doing a presentation out in Taylor County over in Abilene. I'm going to share with them what we're doing and talk a little bit. So I'm doing as much as I can. The whole pilot itself is a pilot for everyone. I've notified the Department of Family Protective Services what we're doing, and I committed I will share to them as well as with all the other judges. They're already asking me for my court orders. They want to see them. And I said, I want to give you something that I know works. So give me just a moment to assure that we're on the right path. But yes, model court, we are guinea pigs, we are innovators, we are going to find the best approaches, and then we're going to teach people about it and we're going to share it. And that's the whole purpose of our pilot. So yes, and you know, it's going to be as receptive as every community can be, but I think getting the community together and saying, yes, we want to bring this to our community too, that's what's going to be important. If your leadership in that community is not quite there, ready to move forward, the people have a voice.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm just saying that I don't know if you really looked at the chat, Judge, but there's so
I'm
many
looking at it
amens
now.
and hallelujahs in there. So kudos. We're just so excited. Hey, everybody, we got about 5 more minutes. So get your questions out there. Put yourself into the virtual hand raise thing, and let's keep asking Judge some more questions. One of my questions that I had, Judge, is there's a lot that you've done in just a little bit of time, from what I'm understanding and from what your presentation said. What is like a goal to get through all of those stages and all the tracks? What are you guys looking at about that?
So so we really started last year with this. I'll say before I was the 126th District Court judge, I was elected in 20 and started 2021. I was the associate judge that was supporting the district judge. So I did have some years where I wasn't the primary judge in charge, but I was looking at these issues and starting some initiatives. But our goal is that the spring, which right about now, we're starting to get ready, we're going to launch these different tracks of working with families with substance use, domestic violence, and mental health, that we will have actual different changes and ways in which we're engaging with those families. And then in the summer that we're launching some prevention. So that's going to look like our prevention into dual status. Perhaps that'll be a docket, some additional supports and resources to prevent the recidivism. I also would like to create a strong partnership with our hospitals locally to make sure that we have plans of safe care. So the hospitals, when babies are born with substances in their system, are supposed to be looking at how they can make plans of safe care for that parent who is discharging from the hospital. I'll tell you, it hasn't been happening here. I've seen those families and I don't have any plans of safe care. But what happens is a lot of them end up in my family drug court, and we do a family plan of service, which probably the same thing, just one is more in prevention and one is after we already have CPS involved. So I really want to work with our hospital social workers and our hospitals to see how we can be supportive as the legal system and child welfare in getting plans of safe care before they even get to me. So the summer is really going to be our focus of prevention. And then we're gearing up and we're getting ready to change how things happen in court. And I'll say it's even as simple as sometimes when I'm talking to a parent, they're protective. They have struggles. They just need to be able to have the resources to thrive. And I will say, let's take a moment and step back. If I'm not ordering you to do something, but I'm ordering CPS to do something that's actually going to help you, what would that be? And I'm letting them tell me what is actually going to help their family. And I'll say that has been an amazing question, even just asking that question in court from the judge. and then being able to order CPS to provide the kinds of support that for whatever reason did not come out in the communication as we were leading up coming to court. And I've seen some really positive things happen whenever we framed it that way about what can they do to help you, rather than what services do I want to order them to do, what hoops do they need to jump through. And so it is a different approach, but that it's even starts just that way in changing the culture of how we work with families.
Nice. I have one last question for you, and then we have to wrap this up. It says, I know of quite a few teenage parents who are in the child welfare system. Most aren't able to be in their child's life because their baby is taken from them. Foster care doesn't want to take both the mother and baby, etc. What can be done about this situation? Mentally and emotionally, is there something in the community that they can gravitate toward for help?
Yes, and I agree that that is one of the situations that is most concerning for me. And every indication for us is that if we have a youth in care who has a baby, we want them to stay together. I will tell you, the problem is exactly as stated. We don't have enough foster homes or places, whether they're some kind of program. We don't have enough availability for those teen parents to stay with their child. They have to be placed somewhere. And there are some policy issues that prevent that from happening if we don't also take custody of the baby, for the baby to be placed with the mom together. But it's a foster care payment issue and a lot of responsibility that you're expecting on the foster parents. But that is something that we are trying to navigate. What can we do and what by court order can occur so that we can get at least a place that's safe, healthy, and stable for them to be with their babies. But you got to remember that these teen parents are going to require a lot of support in their parenting. And so people have to be ready for that, that even though you may be technically responsible for the teenager, that teenager is responsible for a baby. So you have to help that teenager be responsible for a baby also. We have, if you go to our website under our model court, we have a committee that is for looking at issues that impact pregnant and parenting foster youth. And so we are having a group of people meeting monthly. We're talking about how we can have trauma-informed sex education that talks about healthy relationships as well. So we're looking at the prevention pieces of that. But yes, and I will say our committees that we have on our model court that you see on our page are really open to professionals throughout the community and people with lived experience. So if you have even a passion to join one of our committees through model court, again, send me a message and I have somebody within my court staff who can help connect you and let you know when we have those meetings.
Oh, everybody, Judge Aurora Martinez Jones. Yes, thank you so much. So
Thank
much.
you
We
for
truly
having
appreciate you. Yes, and anybody who wants to get involved, there's so many things in the chat for you to be able to do so. I'm sure that she is open and ready for it. Gosh, we're done, guys, and I really don't want to leave, but I would like to thank Judge Aurora Martinez Jones for sharing her knowledge and insight with us. And many thanks to all of you for joining us today. Please take a few minutes to complete the workshop survey. It does help us to know how we're doing. The links have been throughout the chat. And remember, unfortunately, there's no session CEUs for this. Thanks again. Please be safe. Don't forget that we're getting ready to go into our lunchtime session and get our groove on. And if you need anything, we'd love to hear. Thank you, and you have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.